In what surroundings did Abai write his most important works? What legends are associated with his name? What is unique about the Zhidebay family estate? All this in the new episode of Welcome to Kazakhstan project. The name Abai is one of the most important for any resident of Kazakhstan. Poet and enlightener Abai Kunanbayoğlu has flown like a shooting star across the steppe sky, leaving rich heritage for us. And where else but here, in the House Museum of Abai, which is in Zhidebay, it is easiest to make sure of this. This is Welcome to Kazakhstan project. My name is Zakirjan Mamlutov. Let's broaden our horizons. Initially, the winter camp belonged to Abai's brother Osman, who inherited it from Kunanbay. But in 1892, Osman died, and fate led Abai to fulfill the ancient Kazakh tradition of a mangery. According to the law, he had to marry the widow of the deceased and take care of her. Thus, Abai spent the last 10 years of his life in the Zhidebay estate.
Абай обосновался на этом месте в 1840 году. Это зимовка Абая.
Kunanbay settled on this site in 1840. This is Abai's winter camp. This house was built according to Abai's project in 1895. But then there were difficult times. The project was changed more than once. By the 150th anniversary, it was completely restored. Abai's project was preserved. Windows, doors, ceilings, everything was built the same way. It was made of adobe. Only 3 walls were built of stone. In this house, Abai spent the last 10 years of his life with his third wife, Yerkejan. The wives lived separately. The first wife, Dilda, lived in Araltobe, 60 kilometers from here. The second wife, Aygerim, also lived separately in Akshoke, also 60 kilometers from here. This is the second living room. Here in this house, Abai had been meeting many guests. There were Kazakh scientists and poets here. In this house, Abai wrote his poems. This is Abai's cabinet. Here, Abai, in solitude, wrote his poems and the words of edification.
Слова назиданий в Святом доме.
Researchers of Abai's heritage call the years spent in the estate the most productive period of the poet's work. Within the walls of the estate, Abai wrote 75 poems, completed a significant part of his words of edification. There, he began translating Krylov's fables and Lermontov's works. Same as for Pushkin, his autumn in the Boldino estate played a special role, so for Abai, the Zhidebay estate was the catalyst for creating his main works. And this is the main room in the house, Abai's cabinet. It was here where he wrote his poems. Everything breathes with creativity. Books in the closet, writing materials on the table. Thus, in solitude and tranquility, the words of edification were born. There are 5 rooms and 3 halls in the exposition of the House Museum. Of course, Abai's library is also presented. Here are publications in Russian, Persian, Turkish and Arabic. Most of the things around also belong to the poet personally. An inkwell, a 3-string dombra, a cupboard for dishes inlaid with bone. Famous guests of Abai, travelers and writers of those years, look from the photographs on the walls.
This
is a living room. The first guests were welcomed here. The floor was covered with handmade carpets. Now they have already been updated. They met guests on the floor. Here is another exhibit installed, a furnace. The furnace was built according to the urban style. Here is a dowry from the second wife Aygirim, a Persian wall carpet. Kazakh bowed musical instrument, which is called kolkobuz. 3-string dombra. Abai played the 3-string dombra. The bed, a dowry from the second wife Aygirim. It is made of wood. The front part is inlaid with bone, such as horse scapular, jawbone and fine bone. This bed has 2 features, 2 benefits. Since the Kazakhs were a nomadic people, they laid a felt mat on a camel, put a bed on it, blankets and pillows on it. So they slept. And the second benefit is that both edges are raised. The person lying on it had good blood circulation. There was no high blood pressure at that time. Here are the board games. Abai loved to play board games. These are togus, kumalak, checkers made of ram bone. This is pebble pouch. So this is the living room.
Бараньи кости, кисет для камушек. Это гостиная комната.
In addition to touching the heritage of Abai, guests of the house can learn a lot about the life of the Kazakh people. For example, there is shoshala, that is, the place where meat was smoked in summer and stored in winter, as in a cold closet. Was not only a poet and educator, he also remained in the memory of the people as a patron and philanthropist. When Abai saw that he could help someone fulfill their potential, he spared no expense. There are many interesting stories related to Abai. For example, everyone knows that Abai had baluans, wrestlers. He had a baluan named Nurmagomedov. Prior to him, there was Kakshe, but he grew old and could not wrestle with dignity. Then Abai asks to find a young wrestler. He is offered a young man named Nurmagomedov. During his next trip along the way, Abai meets a sheep shepherd. The young man was strong, broad-shouldered, and large. Abai called him and asked for his name. He replied that his name was Nurmagomedov. Abai recognized him by name and said that from that day he would be his Balawan and would wrestle on his behalf. Abai paid all his debts and took the young man with him. And this is the most prestigious vehicle of that time, a light spring carriage, that is, chaise. How much horsepower it had? Well, there was as much horsepower as many horses they could harness in it. Anyone can get to the Zhidebay state. The way from Semey is about 180 kilometers. And if you have read the work of Mukhtar Ouezov, The Path of Abai, then throughout the entire route you will have the feeling that you are traveling through the pages of the novel. By the way, Mukhtar Ouezov himself was born in the village of Barile, which you will pass along the way. Look carefully at the signs near the road. They contain information about the history of these places.
Жизнь Абая
Abai's life is an example for all residents of Kazakhstan. His words of edification to this day find a response in the hearts of grateful descendants. And a visit to the House Museum is a great way to draw even more wisdom from the well that Abai Kunanbayule had bequeathed us.